So in today's video, it will be your questions and my answers. And I asked out on Instagram for a lot of questions, and I will just pick out the most interesting ones. And the first question is, what is the most frustrating part about having a YouTube channel? Well, the most frustrating part is obviously when you put a lot of work into making a video that you're very passionate about and people don't see it. And that is also why there's a lot of emphasis on making a proper thumbnail and a proper title, because until people actually click the video, you have to fight with everyone else on YouTube for your potential viewers' attention. And if your thumbnail and title doesn't make people click the video, then, well, they won't see it. So that's basically it. But when they do click the video, obviously you need to have some kind of hook, it's called, technically, so people actually stay and watch the video. And that in itself is also a technique which can be hard to master. So, well, to get back to the question, the most frustrating part about having a YouTube channel is obviously when you put a lot of time and energy into a YouTube video and people don't watch it. That's a little bit frustrating because I'm very passionate about the videos I put out. So the next question is, what was my first camera? And my first camera, or DSLR, that would be the Canon EOS 550D. In US it was called the T2i. That's a really good starter camera. As far as I remember, it had like 16 or 18 megapixels and it had a dynamic range of 12 stops and APS-C and so forth, but it was just a really good starter camera. Obviously you arguably could need a bit more megapixels, but even the 12 stops of dynamic range was pretty good for most kind of landscape photography. It's only when you get into night photography and really harsh light photography, well, then you would still brag it, that you need those extra stops of dynamic range, and especially ISO night or low light performance wasn't that good either. That's where you want the more expensive camera. So yeah, the 550D. Next question is what I think about moody tones. Well, it all depends how you define moody tones, because if you look through my portfolio on my homepage, I have a lot of moody photos and I really like it. Obviously, moody tones, if we say that's like that desaturated look, it works fine if it goes along with the scene. Obviously I see a lot on Instagram that the popular style on Instagram is that moody desaturated look, and it just looks as if they put that preset on everything, and that's not how I like to do photography. But if it works for the Instagrammers, well, peace be with that. I think it would be sad to go to a beautiful sunrise and then desaturate all the beautiful golden hour colors. But yeah, it works if it's overcast and it's really, heavy clouds and so forth. Then I really like it. So it works for something, and other times I choose to do something else. So right now I'm actually out for a walk in a neighboring town, or just outside of neighboring town to where I live, and just to check out some new photography opportunities. And I found this forest of oak trees, and well, the road is literally out here on the other side. But if you can find that one interesting scene, nobody will ever know that there's a road nearby. And I really like these gnarly oak forests you can see up here in the background. It's a bit more like, you know, a fairy tale forest. There's some history going on, and I really like that. So I'm just basically out scouting and checking out some new locations. Next question is, how do I balance photography and family? Well, since I have Sophie as my girlfriend and we don't have any kids, it's not really that much of a problem for me. Sophie is writing her PhD, so she's pretty occupied with that. And from time to time, she simply just joined me on the photography tours. Like, for her, it's super fun and interesting too. So it's definitely something we have together. So I don't really have to think much of the balance yet. So the next question is, what is my advice for taking epic photos in what I understand as relatively boring locations, like plains and woodlands where there's no mountains? Well, if you have just seen my video from last week, I specifically said there in the end of the video that I let the scene dictate what kind of photography I do, and that forest definitely wasn't epic. I would never say that a beach forest in Denmark is epic, because it's not epic. It's more intimate. And so then I would just go with that. I don't want to try and force something epic which isn't epic, because to me that's, I don't know, fake. And well, when it comes to like more open landscapes, which we also have in Denmark, you can get a long way with using the longer lens. Zooming in, so you get that compression effect, does a lot. So if you have like long rolling hills, you can use the long lens instead. And that gives a better idea about how the landscape is, because if you just shoot it with a wide angle, you will only basically see the foreground, and the background will be super small. And if there's no big things in the background, such as mountains, yeah, you won't really get that epic feeling. So try with a long lens. So this place right here behind me is actually quite interesting. You can see I have this, oh, so many mosquitoes here. So I have this branch going over, and it kind of like frames the background scene here with those 3-4 trees here. And yeah, I'm battling the mosquitoes, so it's a bit hard to talk about because I really don't like mosquitoes. But this could actually be a pretty cool shot if I got just a little bit of sunlight through the trees. So yeah, definitely a place I want to return to. So the next question is, what's my favorite spot in Iceland? Well, hard pressed, it would likely be Stokksnes. I also really like Eystrahorn. Kirkjufell is of course beautiful too. But yeah, Stokksnes would probably be my pick for my favorite spot in Iceland. So the next question is not really a question. It's NDs for long exposures aren't necessary due to image mean in Photoshop. Change my mind. I'm not going to change your mind. It's absolutely true. You don't need a neutral density filter to do long exposures. You can just take a bunch of photos and stack them in Photoshop, convert them to a smart object, and then blend them with the mean mode. It's the exact same effect, more or less. How you get the shot you want doesn't matter at all. There are too many photographers out there who bitch about the right technique. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. If the end goal is the same, and this is how you do photography, obviously, and it works for you, just do that. So next question is, how do I bracket photos without getting the ghosting effect? I think without being sure that the question is how I blend the photos without getting the ghosting effect. Obviously, when you're in field and you take multiple photos and you want to stack them, you want to make sure that your scene doesn't move. In case it moves and you can't do anything about it moving, then what I usually do, because I don't make like an HDR image usually, I just blend the photos manually in layers in Photoshop and just make sure that I don't blend them or mask them. So I show that ghosting. It's a fairly simple technique. So when did I start photography? I started photography more or less in 2011 and 12, and then it really exploded during the years 12, 13, 14. And then I went to Iceland for the first time as a landscape photographer in 2015. And that was where my interest for landscape photography really exploded. Until then I'd done a lot of portraits, like that cinematic headshot portraits, but then I just started focusing on landscape photography, and I've more or less done that since. So the next question is what to do when you're having a good fall background but bad skies, just plain cloud. Well, sometimes you just have to realize that there is simply just not a photo. And you can't force anything through, which is boring. I have a few examples of photos. I'm putting them on the screen right now, if you're just listening to this, where I just had completely white skies, but I made it work as part of the photo. And yeah, well, that's basically it. Either you make it work as part of the photo, you don't include them, or you just have to realize there's not a shot that day. So next question is, what can a new photographer not learn through YouTube? I would say everything related to practice. You learn a lot of theory through YouTube videos such as mine, and then you will have to go out and practice it yourself. And with that practice comes, of course, some experience, and that makes you more sharp, gives you better intuition of what works and what doesn't work. So practice, 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 practice. That doesn't mean that you should underestimate what you can learn from the theory on YouTube. It goes hand in hand. As an educated teacher, what we learn is that theory and practice is basically the two sides of the same coin in regard to learning. So all those photographers who say go out and shoot, it becomes habit triggering if you just go out and shoot. Learn a bit of theory first, and then you have a better aim when you're out and shooting. So next question, how do I approach a new location with no obvious compositions? Well, I look around, I explore. The thing is, I rarely do that because when I go to a location, I have a pretty good idea about what I want. Let's say I would go like 2 weeks to Britain. Like, I have a pretty meticulous plan about what I want to see, where I want to go, and what kind of photos I want. And if something manifests in front of me and I improvise something, well, good. Then I of course take that photo. But I very, very rarely go to locations that I don't think is obvious for photography. But if I do, I would basically just look around. I would maybe take out my phone first, walk around and start framing different things that catches my eye. Generally, and I've talked about this in other videos, I'm always about finding that focal point. What is it I want to take a picture of? Because if I don't have a focal point, yeah, then ask yourself, what are you taking a picture of? What's my video with 5 steps to take powerful wide-angle photos? It's basically the same approach I have with any other lens. So the best part about being a landscape photographer on YouTube is definitely the community and all the positive feedback I get from you guys out there. It's just that every time I upload a new video, watching those first comments come in, it's always like, very confirming and acknowledging feedback I get, and I really appreciate that. The amount of demeaning comments I've got on my videos over the years, I can count them more or less on one hand, and it just means so much. So thank you so much, guys. It also means a lot that I can do this and make a living out of it, running workshops, selling my digital products, selling a few prints from time to time. It's not much, but it does happen. So yeah, there are links to everything down in the description as always. And as always, thank you so much for watching. I would highly appreciate both a like and a comment if you have anything to say. So thank you so much.